Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man swings back into theaters in Spider-Man Brand New Day. So let's talk about it. We are going to get into spoilers throughout this video about characters and plot details. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, check out my out of theater reaction instead and come back after you've seen the movie. So Spider-Man Brand New Day is the fourth standalone installment for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. This one's directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who also directed Shang-Chi. So already I'm on board with this because I love the Shang-Chi movie. And to have Destin helm this project with Spider-Man is such a dream come true to see his interpretation of this character. Overall, this movie had a lot going for it, especially the visuals, the stunts, the choreography, the special effects, all top marks, especially compared just apples to apples to all the other Spider-Man movie. If you played side by side some of the action sequences and some of the swinging sequences in particular, I would say this is visually the best looking and immersive experience you'll get, just purely through the Spider-Man swinging and fighting scenes alone. But overall, I think they failed to stick the landing at the end. And unfortunately, while all these ingredients were there to make a really impactful movie, it seemed like the final act just kind of dropped the ball and didn't quite stick the landing and bring it all home. I felt like there was a lot missing and a lot left to be desired. So unfortunately, I wouldn't say this is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. No Way Home is going to be a very tough movie to beat just because it had so much going for it with the appearance of the other two Spider-Man, with all the villains brought together from all the universes, and just the spectacle of it all just made for a really entertaining and memorable movie. And this one just didn't quite measure up to those very high standards. One of the more refreshing aspects of this story is the fact that they brought us back to kind of ground zero, classic Spider-Man, street level, taking a break from the grand scale things that we saw in the Avengers movies where Spider-Man is fighting in space and things like that. I really enjoyed bringing it back to the basics because that's what Spider-Man is really all about. He even has a working relationship with the police and specifically through a detective. So you have kind of this Commissioner Gordon Batman dynamic that's happening, which I think gives another dimension to his crime fighting chapter in this movie. So because the world forgot who Peter Parker is, we're back to hiding his identity, which is a classic trope we're used to seeing in Spider-Man movies. So that was nice to kind of have back in the fold. And at the end of No Way Home, we find that he has sewn his own Spider-Man costume from scratch. So it's just a very basic street level Spider-Man classic costume, which is inspired by his two brothers, Peter number 2 and Peter number 3. And he really kind of drew from that inspiration when he saw the other two Spider-Man from the other universes don that kind of more classic Spider-Man suit. So he's going back to that look. And actually, even though it was a plainer suit, like a more classic, almost cartoony costume design, it looked really good on screen. The raised webbing and the texture and the vibrant color, it just really popped on screen. So I really liked the way it looked. But I was a little let down that they kept the technology aspect of the suit. So he still has kind of this artificial intelligence built into the suit that he can talk to. And it was very similar to the Iron Man Jarvis situation, which is what made Tom Holland's suit different from the other suits that we saw in the other movies, because it has that high-tech aspect to it. And I was hoping the fact that he went back to a classic-looking hand-sewn suit meant that he would do without the technology. But nonetheless, it served its function, which is to give a kind of an edge to the storytelling where the computer or the AI can walk us through the things that are happening with Peter Parker / Spider-Man, particularly when he's dealing with this evolution situation. The spider DNA evolution aspect was probably the more interesting things that they set up, and it was cool to see him kind of deal with that and the confusion and the fear he had in that taking over his body, and the organic web shooters, the enhanced strength and the enhanced rage. They kind of depicted that with the little spider documentary and how it becomes a mature spider, like an adult spider. It's basically like puberty for spiders. And that kind of explains what he's going through, because he is also changing in that way and being more enhanced. And it was kind of reminiscent of dealing with the symbiote storyline in the other movies, where he kind of goes dark and he's kind of uncontrollable and he has to learn how to deal with that. And throughout the movie, you get this inhibitor situation. And at the end, you get this great moment where he says he's both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. and he embraces his newfound power by destroying the inhibitor, and that allows him to take out the hand in the way that he does in a very epic fashion. But also, he stopped that ninja from getting killed and showing that he still has his humanity and that he is still Peter Parker and he can balance the two. So it does level up his ability and level up what he can do as both Spider-Man and Peter Parker, that he's in control of it. Kind of loved how they made him awkward and trying to figure out how to use his organic web shooting. Not only was he kind of freaked out about it, but he didn't quite know how to use it and swing with it smoothly like he did with his devices. And that's very reminiscent, again, of the older movies where you first see Peter Parker discover his powers and learning how to use them for the first time. So again, very familiar tropes. It's refreshing to see Tom Holland Spider-Man go through these things, but it's also very familiar because we've seen similar tropes in the other movies. In addition to the suit, Tom Holland himself got into really good shape. Like, he's really buff in this movie. He has that scene where he gets into the pool and you can see his full physique. They kind of explain that a little bit later on when you get the apartment scene and they reference his protein powder and that sort of thing. But I don't know. He was almost too muscular to be Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, I always like him a little bit more slim. And I know he's not a teenager anymore, but I like the idea of him being a teenager in high school and being kind of a smaller character compared to the rest of our heroes. But now he's looking jacked like Captain America, Chris Evans. So, I mean, it is what it is. You know, I think people are impressed with his physique. I just don't know if it was a great fit for Spider-Man to be that big. So a couple of characters that people were excited to see are the Hulk and the Punisher. And I thought they were both used pretty well in this movie. They were used just enough for supporting roles. Bruce Banner / Hulk kind of gave us the scientific aspect of how to deal with this evolution, how to suppress it. And then you get this great battle where he's being mind controlled by Jean Grey. And then Punisher comes in and he's trying to help out. And all he has are guns, which are largely ineffective against Hulk. So you get that really hilarious line from Spider-Man saying, "Dude, this is way above your pay grade. What are you doing?" Which is like the funniest thing to hear when Punisher is seriously trying to take on the Hulk with his assault rifle. And I was kind of curious to see how they would integrate Punisher, because his tone and his shows are so different and opposite from the Spider-Man tone. But they made it work, right? They are different, like very polar opposite personalities, but that's what makes it work. That's what makes the dynamic so fun, because you have someone that's kind of dark and broody, and then you have Spider-Man who's friendly and just a good kid, and how they disagree on how to approach things, and they kind of frustrate each other for different reasons. So it was a lot of fun to see that dynamic and to see the love between them, because, you know, at the end, Punisher is very remorseful when he accidentally shoots him, and shows up to the hospital and has that, you know, emotional scene with him where he's kind of crying about it because he feels guilty. And I just thought Punisher was really well used. I mean, he was still very much Frank Castle and still very much the Punisher. He's still using guns. He's got going around in his battle van, which is cool to see. And he's cursing, or at least trying to curse. And he's eating, you know, chili from a can and living alone on a submarine, abandoned submarine. So it's very much still the same character, but just in a different context and through the lens of a different perspective, because you're kind of seeing him and interacting with him through these other characters. But I thought John Berthal did a good job of balancing, you know, remaining the Punisher, but also fitting into this world of Spider-Man. So there's an issue with trailers for these movies where they put like some of the best visuals in the trailer to get you to go watch the movie. And it's kind of misleading sometimes, because when you get into the movie, you think it's one thing, but it turns out to be another. What they did here was give you a montage of all these great characters and classic comic book covered inspired shots of Spider-Man fighting these other characters. You got Tombstone, played by Marvin Jones III, who looked amazing, by the way. You got Boomerang. And the trailer made it seem like he was going to have to go and fight all these characters at some point throughout the movie, but really it was just a montage at the beginning showing all the things that Spider-Man's been busy doing, which ultimately was fine. It would have been too much to try to incorporate them any more than that. It was still great to get those visuals, but I'm just making a side note that those trailers can be misleading in that way, to make you think that it's more than what it really is. The high points of this movie would be the visuals and the fight choreography. So the visuals I experienced in 3D kind of inadvertently. I didn't realize I had purchased 3D tickets, but I did. And I was glad I did because a lot of the beginning scenes where he's just swinging around New York from the skyscrapers are so immersive and so mesmerizing to see, sometimes through his perspective, sometimes right behind him. And you get the motion camera where you're swinging with him and you're looking down at the city from high up. And it felt like you're swinging right there with Spider-Man, which is so much fun. Really appreciated the shot of him inside the mask where you can see his eye as he's wearing the mask still, so you can kind of see the interior of the eye part of the mask. And it just looks so artistic, and it kind of made you feel like you're in the suit with Spider-Man. It's not surprising that the fight scenes in this movie are so high octane and spectacular because it's Jackie Chan's stunt team who also worked on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So the fights between Spider-Man and all the different characters that he had to face off with were some of the best we've seen in a Spider-Man movie. Particularly the fight with him and the hand ninjas inside the jail was just the high note for the whole movie because you saw him do some crazy things that we haven't seen before, particularly when he uses that tornado spinning up and captures all the ninjas in one swoop and pulls them down. Like that was crazy. But in the first half, they did a good job of setting up really potentially impactful ingredients, right? So you have the memory loss situation where he's kind of longing to have his friends back, to have MJ back, but he doesn't know how to do it. And he's kind of tagging along and trying to get involved in their lives and trying to figure out a way to get back in. And then he's discouraged when he sees a new boyfriend and he storms off. And although we get MJ to finally read the letter, although inadvertently, we get this very emotional dialogue between the two of them and how, despite all of this and how bad she feels, she still doesn't know him, she doesn't remember him, therefore she doesn't love him. You get this heartbreaking scene where Peter Parker realizes that he can't fix it, he can't win her back because she still doesn't remember who he is. And there is that fun scene where he's hanging out with Ned and MJ in their apartment, and it's kind of like old times again, at least in his mind. And then at the very end, you do get that secret handshake that triggers a memory. And Ned says, Peter? But it's unclear, right? They kind of left it open. Maybe he remembers him. Maybe he just recalls that MJ said Peter earlier. So now he realizes Peter is Spider-Man. I'm not sure. But either way, it kind of left something to be desired because the way they set up the end of No Way Home, it felt like this next movie should have resolved the memory issue. But unfortunately, they kind of left it open. And perhaps they're planning to resolve it in a later movie. So it kind of just left me feeling like unresolved, which was just not as satisfying. Michael Mann comes back as Scorpion, which is nice because we get a delivered promise from the end credit scene where we see him in jail with Vulture. So he finally comes back in his full suit and armor with the tail and everything. So we get our full Scorpion. He wasn't a main villain. He wasn't even that important. He was kind of used as a tool by Jean Grey. But nonetheless, it was cool to see him actualize the Scorpion moniker and to put on the suit and fight Spider-Man. I think the most disappointing aspect of this movie was the whole treatment of Jean Grey, which, by the way, was like the worst kept secret of all time because the internet was clamoring about her being Jean Grey the whole time. First off, I like Sadie Sink. I thought she was amazing in Stranger Things. I think she's a wonderful actress. I don't think she's the best fit for Jean Grey. I just didn't see it. And unfortunately, by the end of the movie, I still wasn't convinced that she's a good cast for Jean Grey. I say that because Jean Grey is mostly depicted as the responsible voice of reason, moral compass of the X-Men team, even when it relates to Cyclops, who's supposed to be the leader. When he gets out of whack with his emotions, she's the one that sets him straight, right? She's the moral compass, and she's supposed to be the balanced one out of the team. And more so serve as like a protective, responsible, motherly figure for the X-Men. And here we get, yes, a younger version of Jean Grey, but her teenage angst and her anger, although I understand it's served by the plot and what happened to her and her sister, it just didn't feel like Jean Grey. I mean, she's out there controlling people, violating their headspace, and putting people in danger, shooting soldiers, using guns and using Hulk and just causing all kinds of havoc. And it just didn't feel like what Jean Grey would do. And the reveal was kind of sucky, right? It was kind of anticlimactic. They just read her name on a screen when they ran like a profile check on her. And I just felt like if you're gonna do a secret Jean Grey reveal, the reveal should have been more epic and more dramatic than that. I don't know how exactly, but reading her name on a screen wasn't it. When you boil it down, the whole thing is okay, her and her sister are hanging out, her sister gets kidnapped, she's trying to find her sister, and she knows her sister is being held by this organization, so she just wants to infiltrate and question him about the one thing that she got a message of telepathically, which is the VMAX, which turned out to be just the label for the Vent Max air conditioning unit inside the little lab. But ultimately, what it came down to was, I want my sister back. Oh, my sister's dead. Oh, I'm pissed. I want to kill some people, but I'm not sure if I really want to kill people. Spider-Man comes in, talks her out of it, and that's pretty much it. Like that's what the last act and the culmination of everything that was happening. That's what it came down to, and it just felt very much like a letdown, like very anticlimactic, and it just again didn't stick the landing when that's all that really happened at the end. And did it seem blatant to you as it did to me that they just tore a page from the playbook of Thunderbolts in terms of ending the whole situation with the internal mental the dialogue between characters to kind of save Jean Grey from herself and from wreaking more havoc and death by just convincing her with some emotional appeal? And that's really what it came down to, right? That's what they did in Thunderbolts. It wasn't a big epic battle. It was just an internal dialogue through her telepathic powers to get her to stop doing what she was doing, which is to kill the people that apparently killed her sister. And the only reason it truly stopped is because the Punisher decided to take matters into his own hands and put a bullet in Jean Grey, except Spider-Man sensed it and sacrificed himself taking the bullet for her, which just resulted in Jean Grey being empathetic and trying to keep him alive using her abilities, Spider-Man ending up at the hospital, and Punisher feeling bad for the whole thing and just sitting by his side until he can help him get out of the hospital. And that's kind of where things end. Spider-Man's injured. He's wanting to get back into action, help the detective fight more crime, but he's taking a breather. Jean Grey's just kind of on the loose, and it just didn't feel very consequential. I did like how they portrayed Jean Grey's powers, where she's basically hopping from body to body, mind to mind. Kind of like Kilgrave from Jessica Jones, where she can momentarily control someone's mind. They planted the seed for this three-way love triangle situation where Peter Parker wants to get MJ, but MJ's got the new boyfriend and he seems like a cool guy. And we only saw him once at the party and then never again, which is weird because that again is a classic trope of the old Spider-Man movies where he's trying to get the girl, but the girl has another guy and somehow he's got to, they got to figure that out. But we didn't see that manifest here, at least not yet. Maybe they're saving that for yet another movie, but I would have liked to see more play. Maybe Peter Parker being in the same room as a new boyfriend and them kind of interacting, him trying to hide his feelings for MJ and creating that sort of tension. Another exciting aspect is the evolution of his powers and his spider DNA, making him stronger, but also kind of out of control. I liked how he had to wrestle with that and figure out scientifically how to suppress it, but ultimately giving into it and embracing it as his new identity and his new ability and just learning how to control it. It was very reminiscent of the treatment of the symbiote that we saw in Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, how he's grappling with his darker side and he doesn't quite know how to control it. I enjoyed all of that, and I did enjoy the resolution where he learns finally to embrace both sides and to use his new power. I mean, it was pretty cool seeing him punch a guy and seeing him fly across the room and a sword get cut across his arm, but he's able to block it. So it kind of levels up this Spider-Man for future conflicts that we're going to see him in. So that's kind of exciting to see this new and improved, stronger version of Spider-Man. Shot of Spider-Man pulling Punisher while Punisher is firing everything he has at Hulk was just so glorious and so fun to see. So that was probably our most exciting battle, short of the hand fight in the jail. Another fun little detail was when Ned ordered 5 banh mi so that they can all snack on Vietnamese sandwiches. A little bit of Vietnamese culture infused into a Spider-Man movie just puts a smile on my face. But I would have loved to actually have seen them eat the banh mi. Just a shot of Spider-Man pulling up his mask and taking a big bite. We do get a surprise cameo by Yelena, Black Widow, or the new Black Widow, played by Florence Pugh. She is currently the new Avengers' leader, so she's talking to Spider-Man about big potatoes and small potatoes. And honestly, I didn't care for her. Her character can be quite likable sometimes and can be just straight up annoying at other times, depending on what her lines are. I found her scenes to be quite annoying this time around. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for the big potato, small potato references. I thought that was silly. I thought it was stupid and kind of distracting. So I could have lived without any of that, to be honest. But she's in there. She's in the movie. Okay, so at the end of this movie, there's questions about what we are to expect. What are the implications moving forward? So now we have this universe's Jean Grey. She's young. And does that mean there's going to be other young X-Men characters before they become the X-Men in this current timeline and universe? Or are we getting all the other X-Men through the events of Doomsday from other universes? I'm not really sure. But I do know, before posting this video, there were a bunch of announcements, or at least rumors, of casting decisions for the X-Men actors, and they all seem very young. So I'm not sure where these X-Men are going to originate from. And if this Jean Grey is part of that X-Men team, I assume so. You don't get a actress like Sadie not to reuse her for future projects. But let me know what your thoughts are and your guesses as far as how they're going to develop the X-Men movie moving from here, now that we know there's this young version of Jean Grey that exists in our current main MCU timeline. There's also the post-credit scene where the tracking device identifies another Spider-Man, but way out, perhaps in space or coming from a different universe. So does that mean it's Miles Morales showing up from a different universe, maybe extending from the Spider-Verse movies? Is it either Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man coming back? Or is it a completely different Spider-Man that we haven't met yet in one of the many universes that are surely going to be involved in this Doomsday Secret Wars type situation moving forward? Let me know what your thoughts are. I really have no idea what they're implying there. So if you have theories, we'd love to discuss them in the comments. Overall, I give this movie about an 80%. It was good. It was entertaining, but there were definitely some shortcomings, particularly in the last act and how they concluded the whole thing. And I just felt like they set up more than they actually delivered at the end. I would say this movie falls somewhere in the middle of all the Spider-Man movies and Spider-Man appearances. The visuals and the fight choreography definitely set it pretty high. But unfortunately, it fell short with the plot and sticking the landing. That's just my 2 cents on Spider-Man Brand New Day. If you have different thoughts, we'd love to hear them in the comments. And until next time, we'll see you then.